Hello guys, this lecture is concerned with dealing all the four incisors in one go. We'll initially talk about the relative dimension of all the four incisors and then we'll go with dealing all the five types of aspects. So let's get started. Let's talk about the dimension. Now as we know, we have four types of incisors: the maxicentral, the maxilateral, the mandicentral and mandilateral. First we'll go on talking the cervico-incisional length of the crown. This length, as we see, is the cervico-incisional length of the crown. This is a very easy feature to be remembered. For maxicentral, we know it's largest incisor that we have with length of 10.5. Then comes the mandicentral with 9.5 and mandilateral with 9.5. And finally, we have the maxilateral. So it's easy to remember. We'll just remember it as 10.5, 9 and 9.5 for maxicentral and maxilateral. The second feature that we talk about is a root. Now root for maxicentral, maxilateral and mandicentral is somewhat 13. And for mandilateral, it is something that has to be remembered. It has the largest root of 14. So even this can be remembered easily. The roots are all 13 for first three, and for the mandilateral it's 14. Next we'll go on talking about this fifth feature because it's easily it can be remembered easily. We'll talk about maxicentral having the curvature of cervical line. Now if this is the cervix, we said this is the curvature of cervical line, this length. It is 3.5, which is largest, which is considered to be largest for ever tooth present in your jaw. It is largest, and then we have the distal with 2.5. For next all the teeth which include maxicentral, maxilateral and mandicentral, it is 3 and it's 2. That's it. And then when we go on talking about the mesiodistal diameter and labiolingual diameter, it has to be by hearted. It has to be remembered. Do it anyway. But we can go crown, root and the curvature of cervical line can however be remembered to some extent. Okay. Now let's deal with all the five aspects. Now as we see, this is the maxillary central incisor. We have to talk about all the five aspects for the tooth. This is the labial aspect. Now, the first thing that we are going to discuss is the length of the crown. Point number 1, that labially we say the crown to be trapezoidal in shape. It has got somewhat shape of trapezoid. We talk about the shape. So point number 1, it is trapezoidal in shape. Point number 2, as you see from the labial aspect, you can see this curve. This is distal side and this is our mesial side. And this is the incisional edge, of course. We say that the disto-incisional edge is somewhat rounded. Point number 2, we talk the disto-incisional edge to be rounded. Next, this is the mesial side. Now, mesial side, you see it is relatively sharper. Point number 3, I say that the mesio-incisional angle is relatively sharper, whereas disto-incisionally it is rounded. Next thing that I talk about is the shape of the tooth. Now, do you see from this side, if I just try and observe the tooth, it is somewhat convex. It is somewhat convex. So point number 4, I say that labially, I see my crown to be convex in nature. Moving ahead to the lingual aspect. Now this, as I know, is the lingual side. Lingually, the first thing I talk about is this, cingulum. Now, what is the cingulum? I say cingulum is the prominence present on the lingual side. It is the lingual lobe. So I say cingulum can be well seen, or it can be, cingulum is well defined. Secondly, I talk about fossa. Fossa is visible. Fossa is a depression or concavity which is present on the lingual side. This is the lingual aspect. Yes. Thirdly, I talk about the marginal ridges. Can you see this? There are the marginal ridges along the lining of fossa. So point number 3, marginal ridges are well defined. Point number 4, can you see these lines over here? They are nothing else but are called as the developmental grooves. So point number 4, I can see well defined developmental grooves in the fossa itself. Next, let's talk about the mesial aspect. Now, how to identify the mesial and distal? Something that is rounded is your distal. Something that appears to be relatively sharper with the aspect of mesio-incisional length is your mesial side. So this is definitely the mesial side. And yeah, so now mesially, if I see, mesially I talk about the first point that I have to talk in central incisor is this length. As we have discussed, the cervico-incisional, the curvature of the cervical line is largest. So point number 1, the curvature of cervical line is about 3.5 mm in the maxillary central incisors. It's largest, and this is one of the features which can be asked in MCQ. So remember the length to be 3.5. Point number 1. Point number 2, if I observe it labially, I see convex surface. So point number 2, it appears convex labially. and I say it is concave lingually. So labially I see it convex, lingually I see it as concave. Okay. And of course I talk about the shape. I say it is slightly triangular wedge shape. So point number 4 I talk about the shape. It's triangular wedge shape. Same thing I go with talking about distal. Same features are in distal. Again I see the convex labial, the concave lingual, the shape I talk about, it's triangular wedge. Just remember that the curvature of cervical line here, it's 2.5 mm, which is relatively shorter than the mesial. That's it. Now let's talk about the incisional thing. Now incisionally, this is the incisional surface. This. You just need to remember that the mesiodistally, suppose this is your mesial and this is your distal. This is your labial and this is your lingual. I say the mesiodistally, crown is wider than labiolingually. Mesiodistally, crown is wider than labiolingually. Just remember this as the point number 1. Point number 2. So point number 1 you got it. It deals with the comparison between the mesiodistal and the labiolingual. I talk about the shape. Now it is somewhat triangular in shape, they say. Second feature is its shape. We say it is triangular in shape. That is it. Let's talk about the other tooth now. If we see, we have same basic features with little variation. If we see lateral incisor, everything is same. Everything is same. Again, the same thing I talk about shape. It is, I say, labially, it has the trapezoidal shape. The mesiodistal angle, however, if I see here, the mesio-incisional angle and disto-incisional angle. Mesio-incisionally, this is mesio-incisional. So point number 2, I say again, mesio-incisionally, it is rounded, which was not the case in the case of central incisor. It was little sharp. Here it is slightly rounded, and distally it is more rounded. Point number 3, I say distally it is more rounded. That is it. And again I say the convex surface of the root. So that is point number 4. Convex surface of the crown, sorry. That is it. Same thing. Same, everything is quite similar. Again, lingually I have the same features. It is again trapezoidal in shape. The fossa is there, the cingulum is there, the marginal ridges are there, the developmental grooves are there. Everything is quite similar. I'll just go with talking about the variation that we have. Of course, when I talk about the mesial side here, I say mesially here, the cervical line is of 3 mm. The rest all features are same. This is convex, this is concave, this is only 3 mm, this has to be identified, and yes, the shape is triangular wedge. Distally if I say distally at all, it is same features with the cervico-incisional line of 2 mm. Just there is variation, a little bit difference in the incisional edge. Now incisionally, as we have dealt with the central incisor, I said mesiodistally it was larger than labiolingually. Here labiolingually it is greater than mesiodistally, wider than mesiodistally. So if this is our mesial, if this is our distal, if this is labial, this is lingual, I say this is more wider than this. Simple. This is only different thing. Rest everything is same. Now if I talk about everything is same, just there is variation in the dimension and the mesio-incisional and disto-incisional angle. Now this is mandibular central incisor. Firstly, again I go on talking about shape. It is again trapezoidal in shape. Here the mesio-incisional and the disto-incisional angle are more or less same. So this can be point number 2. Mesio-incisional and the disto-incisional angle are same. Okay. We talk about root to be little more slender. Yes. And then I say the shape, if I talk about shape of the crown, I talk about it is straight. As I dealt with in the maxillary incisors, it was slightly convex. Here I can see it is more or less straight. Lingually, again the same features, but different thing that I have is key cingulum is less prominent. So point number 1, cingulum is less prominent as compared to maxillary incisors. Fossa is also less prominent, and developmental grooves are not very noticeable. So point number 2, I talk about the fossa being less prominent. Point number 3, I talk about the developmental grooves not being present. And even marginal ridges that I have. Marginal ridges are not well defined. That is the difference. Mesial side, distal side cannot be very easily identified, as the only basis we could identify it was the mesio-incisal and disto-incisal angle, which appears to be quite straight in case of this teeth. Let's move ahead with lateral, mandibular lateral. Now here, unlike the mandibular central incisor, we have the disto-incisal angle to be curved and the mesio-incisal angle to be slightly along the right angle side. So point number 1, I talk about the shape being trapezoid. Point number 2, I talk about the mesio-incisal angle being rounded. Point number 3, I talk about, point number 2, I talk about the disto-incisal angle to be slight rounded. And point number 3, I talk about the mesio-incisal angle to be slightly at the sharper edge. Yeah. Next, lingually, labially, it is all same. Again, we have the less prominent cingulum, no well-defined marginal ridges. Fossa is not very well defined. That's it. And the shape of the crown, if I see it, is at the right angle. It is straight. It's not convex as we had in the case of the maxillary incisors. So yes, this was all about the tooth, the incisors, the comparative study of incisors. Do like and subscribe for further upcoming videos. Thank you.